Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I, Chamanpreet Kaur,
And I, Amal Jeevan,
welcome you all after the saprous lunch to Communique09, the Asian Telecom Seminar. During the course of this session, we would be enlightened on the political economy of ICT in Asia.
information and communications technologies are increasingly moving to the core of national competitive strategies around the world, thanks to their revolutionary power as a critical enabler of growth, development, and modernization. Around the world, ICT has proven pivotal in helping developing and middle-income economies to leapfrog to higher stages of development and fostering economic and social transformation. Recent economic history has shown that as developed countries approach the technological frontier, ICT is crucial for them to continue innovating in their processes and products and to maintain their competitive advantage.
In these challenging times of global economic crisis, the stupendous capacity of ICT to drive growth and innovation should not be overlooked, since it can play a critical role not only in facilitating a country's recovery, but also in sustaining national competitiveness in medium to long run. Moving on with the session, we would like to invite our first guest, Ms. Helani Galpaya, Chief Operating Officer, LirneAsia, Sri Lanka, to share her views on the topic, the political economy of ICT in Asia. Ma'am, we request you to come up on the stage, please.
Ms. Galpaya leads research related to ICT and telecom sector indicators at LirneAsia. Some components of this research are the annual Telecom Regulatory Environment Survey and the biannual Mobile and Broadband Price Indicators. She is involved in researching various policy aspects of using mobile phones for more than just voice services under LirneAsia's Mobile 2.0 study and has conducted research on the ability of ICTs to increase product traceability in agricultural markets. Ma'am also writes on e-governance and is involved in capacity building activities for regulators in the region. Before joining LirneAsia, she worked at the ICTA, which is the apex ICT policy-making body in Sri Lanka, where, amongst other things, she implemented the Government Information Center. She has a Master of Science degree in Technology and Policy from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, USA. We welcome you, ma'am, to Communique09.
Ma'am, kindly take over the session.
Right. When Anubhav from the organizing committee called and told me or emailed and said, I need to talk about the political economy of telecom in Asia, my first question was, what on earth is that? So I'm going to talk about sort of broadly the political economy, basically to tell you some of our thoughts on what we think is going on, touching a little bit on regulation and maybe some investment, and what are the challenges. 4 key areas that we're going to cover. Let's start with the first one. What are the regulators and the policymakers, i.e. the government type people? What are they doing? Are they helping or hindering the growth of the sector? Every 2 years, LirneAsia does a survey of senior level stakeholders where we go and ask them, what do you think about the effectiveness of the telecom regulatory environment in your country? We ask this from the CEOs of operators, the chief regulatory operator, chief marketing, like CXO level people. We ask this from lawyers, consultants who work in the telecom space. We ask this from people who represent the public interest like consumer associations. And we ask this along 7 dimensions. We ask them to evaluate market entry, interconnection, tariff regulation, allocation of scarce resources, that's spectrum, rights of way, numbering, quality of service, universal service obligations, and the regulation of anti-competitive practices. On a scale of 1 to 5, they mark how they feel about what the regulator and the policymaker are doing in each of these dimensions. I'm not going to go into all of this, but just to show, let's say on the allocation of scarce resources. Oh, before I talk, I'm just going to talk about, because this is a talk on Asia, these are some of the Asian countries that we survey. I've marked out, grayed out Maldives, because Maldivian results due to multiple reasons are not really comparable from a sampling point of view. It's a very small market, everyone knows everyone, people really don't like to answer surveys. So I'm not going to talk about Maldives. But on the allocation of scarce resources, perhaps not surprisingly, the poorest performer is India. In each subsector, fixed, mobile, broadband, the Indian stakeholders feel the regulatory environment is terrible. I don't need to tell you why. Sri Lanka, a tiny little country, has had 3G for about, well, over 2 years now. We've got HSDPA contributing hugely to operator revenues. You guys are sort of still thinking about it and have been thinking about it, I don't know, for the past 10 months, I guess. Hopefully it'll get resolved this year. The Indian operators have a much lower amount of spectrum to work with compared to even world averages, hugely loaded spectrum. It's not sure whether, initially it wasn't sure, people weren't sure whether it would be auctioned and who would qualify, so not surprising that the stakeholders are not unhappy. Interconnection, another dimension. Thailand gets very, very bad scores. Why? Thailand has a situation where basically there are two government-owned entities, TOT and CAT. All the other operators, including I think the 5 or 6 mobile operators, basically get a concessionary agreement to run a network. But the interconnection has to happen through the main government entities. What that basically means is that the operators cannot negotiate anything in terms of interconnection between themselves, or it has been that for a long time. And the two incumbents were charging ridiculous rates, nearly $6 a month for every postpaid SIM that's sold by a mobile operator has to be sold to one of the paid to one of the incumbent operators in order to interconnect, or 18% of revenue on a prepaid SIM. So not surprisingly, the stakeholders don't think this is a very good situation. The scores are very low, as we saw there. There are huge lawsuits where the operators are basically refusing to pay the incumbent operators.